Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing female named Addison. Addison has been a classroom library and consulting educator for nearly 20 years with a master's degree in music composition. They decided to get a second master's in digital storytelling, and it was during that stint when Addison came to accept that they are a transgender person. With that new information, Addison decided to focus on modern gender theory as a way of understanding themselves. She now combines their teaching experience, research skills, and personal story to help others understand LGBTQ issues, especially transgender issues. Addison is here to talk about all the things LGBTQ, and it's an open book in order to bring awareness to this community. Welcome, Addison.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out with us and invite us into your journey and everything that you've been through over the last the course of your life and the journey that you've been on. I know that you are a busy individual, so I so appreciate this. How has your Thursday morning been?
Hectic, getting ready for this. I had to rearrange my studio for streaming instead of recording, so that was a little interesting. And then
I love your background. What city is that?
That's Indianapolis.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm from the general Indy area. Well, actually, I'm originally from West Virginia, but now I live in the Indy area. And if you can hear any crackling, that's actually the snowstorm outside that's rattling all the windows in the house.
Yes, I can hear it. I actually thought maybe it was a little chihuahua prancing around on your floor.
No, that's it's I have the windows sealed in this room to keep out the lights to use it as a video studio, and the wind is blowing so hard it's actually pushing on the insulation and stuff that I have stuffed in the windows.
No kidding.
Yeah, I need to do something about that.
Well, I can hear you perfectly, so everything's all good. Listen, I'd like to just kind of hand the floor off to you, allow you to be able to kind of talk about your journey, your life, the challenges that you've gone through, and how you were kind of able to overcome those challenges and level up, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Well, I think given the title of the show, one of the things I should talk about is coming to terms with my gender identity. Mm-hmm. I always knew that I just didn't like other men when I was growing up and stuff. I never felt like one of the boys. And most of my friends were women or girls, women. And then, grew up, did the man thing for most of my life, and it, never felt quite right. I never thought of myself as a woman, but I knew, I didn't like being a man. And then I had a child, got divorced later, and then I started dating someone who was questioning her sexuality at the time. And we stayed together for a while, and then we broke up, and we stayed good friends. And she started dating somebody who identified as genderqueer, and that was a term I had never actually heard before. Yeah. It's a newer term. It's not in the common lexicon. So it's like, okay, what's this all about? And I read it some more, and then I read another page, And then I did another search, read another page. By the end of I have ADHD, so I did a kind of hyper focus thing on this. And after about 8 hours, I just went, oh crap, that's me. And
really?
Yeah, language is powerful. People don't realize the power of language.
Wait a minute. So your ex-girlfriend's partner,
yes,
is what opened you up to this?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, my ex and I, actually that ex and I, we don't talk anymore. That's the only ex that I have that I don't talk to anymore. Which is, I guess weird for people. But my ex-wife and all my other ex-girlfriends, we talk fine. Anyway, sorry, ADHD, going on a tangent. I'm off my meds because of something I might talk about later. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, when she started dating this genderqueer person, I was curious and I read up on it and I realized that's me. And it made sense. Because I'd always been interested in it. Like, my ex-wife is a psychologist, and I've always been interested in psychology, and because of her and on my volition, I've taken almost every psychological battery you can think of. I was her guinea pig for a while, and those tests always came back like, I had one that actually said that I was a feminized male, and what the heck does that mean? And then I heard this term finally, and I came to realize that's what it was trying to tell me. And I call the learning about genderqueer, learning about non-binary identities, the first layer on the onion of denial. And once I got that out of the way, everything else, it's like a lot of other things fell off of out of my psyche, and I broke through it and realized that I did want to transition. I did not like being a man. I am a non-binary person, but I'm a trans feminine non-binary person, so I do present female, even though in my heart of hearts I'm an NB. Yeah, that's was the beginning of it. And since then, coming out to family, coming out at work, that took me a while. It took me a good 4 years after figuring myself out before I realized I needed to socially transition. And it's when I changed my name and asked people, told people my proper pronouns are they, them, or she, her. And there was always some resistance because of our culture. Right. And eventually I got to this point where I won a grant for gender confirmation surgery. I started HRT. My employer actually does cover my day job does allow gender confirmation procedures through our insurance. Not every employer does. Wow. And even if the insurance company says, hey, it's available, if your employer says, yeah, we're not paying for that, you have no coverage, so you're on your own. That's one of the things that we're fighting against is medical discrimination.
Yeah. So how old were you? 20s, 30s, 40s?
I was early 40s when I finally figured myself out. Wow. I'm 51 now.
You look great. You're 51?
Yeah, thanks. It's a genetic disorder.
And what made you go red? Are you naturally light or red or?
I'm naturally light. No. People always tell me, don't cover your gray. Your gray is gorgeous. Like, I'm not covering my gray. I'm covering the brown. Gray just gets in the way. Yeah. No, I have light brown hair naturally. Yeah. But HRT does some weird things. In addition to allow me to grow breasts and, changing the texture of my skin and other things, it changed the color of my eyes. And I went from blue to green eyes. And I was looking in the mirror, it's like, I have green eyes now. I'm going red. And there you go.
Yes. You know what's so crazy about this is I am literally obsessed with red hair, green eyes my whole life. I just see it's just such a gorgeous combination.
Yeah.
And my parents came and visited me like last month or something down here in Florida. And I took out my old box of memories. I thought it'd be kind of cool to we haven't gone through it for freaking probably them ever. I go through it every couple of years. But anyways, I opened it up. I have 3 Barbies and a little miniature Cabbage Patch, all red hair, green eyes that I saved. Isn't that so funny?
Yeah. Yeah.
Such a great combination. Well, it looks great on you.
Thank you.
I love it. So what I kind of like to unbox is the most obvious question is, what does it mean to be transgender? I feel like there's just so many people that still don't even know what that even is.
Yeah, that's even in, well, okay, the basic definition is anyone who knows themselves to be a gender that society in general would not call them is transgender. So if you know in your heart of hearts that you are a woman, even though your shell is male, you're transgender, and vice versa. Or anybody who technically anybody who is non-binary would be considered transgender in the most broad sense, because they know their gender to be a non-binary gender. Well, most of society will say, "Are you a man or a woman?" They're like, "Yes," or "No," or "What do you mean?" So there's all kinds of ways to be an NB. But the problem we have is that most people believe in a gender binary. If there are men, there's women, and there's nothing else. And men act a certain way and women act a certain way, and you have to follow these rules. But the thing is, those rules are actually society-based. It's like the idea that men's brains and women's brains are inherently different is wrong. Men's brains and women's brains are actually are indistinguishable in most ways. There are a few little circuits in the brain, like 6 very small areas that are gender differentiated. And from this, we believe that gender identity, sexual orientation, and other such things are derived from. It's just your brain structure. So there is evidence, empirical evidence out there, such as twin studies. If like twins separated at birth, if one's trans, the other one's probably trans also. So there's apparently a genetic component. There are fMRI studies where they look at the brains of people in with magnetic resonance in live action, and they find that transgender people's brains react in ways more similar to the gender to which they identify. So you put a trans man in an fMRI, you'll see that his brain will light up like a cisgender man's brain, or more similar to that than to a cisgender woman's brain.
Wow.
There's even dissection, like a postmortem dissection of the brain. There's a few parts that, and they're very small. This whole idea men have more of this kind of matter and women have this kind of matter. That's not true. There's some very small areas of the brain that do help define you in terms of gender. And when they open up somebody's brain after death and they cut them apart, they see that a cisgender man's brain, that small part is built like the brain of a man, of a cisgender man. So sometimes, and they're not sure why, there's multiple avenues apparently this can happen. The parts of the brain that are wired for gender do not match the parts of the brain the parts of the body, basically. And that's not, like I said, there's multiple ways of getting there.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with psychology and sociology and a lot of other things. and even just, your own knowledge. Like I said, I never figured myself out until I knew that non-binary identities was a thing.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's a complicated matter, but in the broadest sense, if you know yourself to be something that everybody else wants to say that you're not, you're trans.
Got it. Did you say that it has been linked to genetics? Did you say that?
There have been a couple of studies done.
I was watching something. I don't know if it was Dr. Phil, but some sort of show, and it was a brother sister, and not twins, just brother sister, and the brother was going towards or is more feminine, and the daughter was trans male, like altered or whatever. And they were kind of joking. I don't know which it was, but they were kind of joking that like their parents birthed both of them wrong. Because they were the opposite, they felt the opposite gender, So that's interesting. I don't remember where that was, but I've never heard that before. And now that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's there's been like I said, there's been twin studies. One twin is trans, the other one's going to be either trans or non-binary or something most of the time, not always. Actually, that same ex-girlfriend had a transgender brother. They were born semi-identical twins, and he transitioned. He is a trans man, so someone who presents as male is a trans man, someone who presents as female is a trans woman.
Yeah.
So your question about what to call the brother and sister.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to remember. There's another study that showed that some trans women, not all, but some trans women, people make a big deal about the Y chromosome being what makes you a man. That's actually not true. The Y chromosome has like one gene that sparks the masculinization process. And all the other genes that are in charge of masculinization are actually on other genes. And what one researcher found was that there are genes that are designed to masculinize the brain. And in some trans women, they're not there. They just don't have the genetic coding to masculinize their brain, so their brain maintained a feminine form from the fetal stage. So that's why they ended up being transgender women. So doesn't apply to all trans.
Yeah. Of course,
one way it happens.
Yeah,
but there are multiple ways of being transgender or getting there.
Yeah. So one of the main just topics in general, and I'm going to be speaking for like mass population because I feel like I am in that genre, but really the only conversations that I hear in general out in public is the bathroom story. What other social, cultural, political obstacles are transgender people facing that we're just kind of like oblivious to?
Oh, well, right now, multiple state legislatures are basically trying to legislate us out of existence. There are bathroom bills, yes. There are keeping trans kids out of sports. And we're talking about people that haven't even gone through puberty yet. So, or they're, they don't, or they're like very early in puberty, or sometimes it's people who have actually been on puberty blockers for a while. So the whole idea that they have a biological, especially for trans girls, born male and presenting and know themselves to be women or girls. There's a really big deal being made that, you can never let them grow, never let them compete in sports with other girls because they have a biological advantage, but not if they're too young to have ever gone through puberty. Boys and girls are basically the same until puberty hits. If
Yeah.
they've been on puberty blockers, they've never developed male masculine. They've never been seriously masculinized. So, and also even for older people, once you've been on HRT for a while, hormone replacement therapy, that biological advantage goes away. It really, I mean,
Wow. Okay.
I used to wear a 40 regular jacket before I
Yeah.
transitioned. Now I'm 38 regulars look big on me because I've lost so
Wow.
much muscle mass in my arms and shoulders and everywhere actually. So someone who has been on HRT, like the swimmer at Penn, she's been on HRT for 2.5 years. She doesn't have a muscular advantage over over cisgender women anymore. I mean, it's just that's one of the things that have been shown that and people want to make a big deal out of this when it's not really. It's just kids wanting to have fun.
Yeah.
And they're trying to prevent kids from having fun. They're trying to prevent kids from actually. There are several places where it's being they're making it illegal for a parent to get their trans kids medical help. Now they're trying to outlaw
Medical help, like psychologically.
No, like puberty blockers.
Got it.
For a trans person to go through puberty if you're have a very strong gender dysphoria already, and then you go through puberty as
the wrong gender.
As the wrong gender, it makes people very upset and depressed and anxious, and so a lot of parents of trans kids, very accepting parents, they will ask their doctors to put the kids on puberty blockers until they can figure themselves out later. And if they want to keep with it, they can medically transition later, or if they decide actually no, I want to keep my body the way it is, they go off the puberty blockers and go through puberty regularly, and that's very beneficial to a trans kid. But so that way they can make the choice. They know where they're going. They're not subjected to, their body changing in ways they don't want it to change.
Yeah.
And they're trying to outlaw that.
Wow.
They're trying
I have a question. And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. It just popped in while you're saying this. So my son is 6'2". If for instance, right, this is not a thing, but if for instance, he was getting these feelings, he's 17, but he was getting these feelings at maybe 15. At 15, he was probably a foot and a half shorter. And, he hadn't really gone through his stuff yet. So if someone like that had gone on the blockers that you're talking about, and then changed their mind, gone off, would my son still reach that 6'2", or does it kind of stint the growth?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would think that once masculinization starts, like adult masculinization starts, yes, there would still be a growth spurt. I don't know if it would be.
I guess we'd never know.
Be the same, yeah. We'd have to do studies on that, and conservative legislatures are trying to make sure that never happens.
Yeah. Is there rules set in place right now for an age on that? Like what the age is to be able to do that?
Wow. Yeah, you can't. You can go on puberty blockers pre-puberty, obviously, but you can't go on HRT until you're older, and I think it depends on the state. Some places it's 14, some places it's 16 before you can start HRT. Some places are trying to make it illegal up to like 21 or ever. So they're basically trying to force trans people out of their states, or they want them to commit suicide, because that's obviously what happens.
Yeah.
So It's
So,
one of those. Yeah.
so
Sorry.
that's okay. My fiance has a trans son.
Mhm.
He's 17. And one of the things that he is very self-conscious about at this point is his hips. He just started the blockers.
Mhm.
You're talking about? But he already has hips.
Yeah.
Is that, you kind of said like you've lost a few inches, all around as far as your masculinity. That can't do anything for the bone structure, right? Like if his,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, it can change. HRT, hormone replacement therapy, can change muscle mass. It can change fat distribution.
God.
So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, once he is, well, that's why I grew. That's why I grew up.
Yes.
That's why I actually have hips now, even though I started HRT at 47, and still, I have less fat and more mass. Like men usually grow their fat up here.
Yeah.
I started putting it on over here, so I have hips now and breasts. And
Wow.
my face, the shape of my face changed also because our face shape is actually has a lot to do with fat distribution. So when you're on HRT for a more masculine, it will make the jawline, the fat will go away from the jawline so much, so he'll get a much sharper jawline once he's on testosterone.
Yeah.
And some of the more feminine facial features will go away. My chin softened, my jawline softened, my eyes got wider because there's actually fat pockets around the eyes and more in males than in females. So
Yeah.
my eyes opened up, so they look bigger than they used to.
Wow.
Yeah, there's lots of changes that happens on HRT. So he will masculinize. Some of the fat around his hips will redistribute,
Okay.
but the bone structure is the bone structure. And
Yeah.
he apparently started puberty, and puberty does change the bone structure. And since he's went through a female puberty, it his hips widened and spread naturally, so there's not much you can do about that.
Yeah. So
But
he doesn't have large breasts, but he's 17, so he does have some. Will that possibly kind of go down a little? He has
no,
little ones. Okay.
I doubt it.
Okay.
Yeah,
They'll have
that's
to have
something. The only
surgery.
thing you can really do about breasts is top surgery.
Top surgery, yeah. That's what
yeah.
he is. Yeah. That's what, I'm sure you know that. That's what they so I want to talk about pronouns.
Okay.
Why? What does it mean?
Okay.
Does it hurt people's feelings?
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah. And how much time do you give people in the world to, like you're working with the same person for 10 years and then all of a sudden you're flipping that, how do you work that? How do you like correct it?
Okay. Let's see.
Well, first question, pronouns.
First, what are pronouns? Pronouns are, and we had a question on HRT, but I'll get back to you, I promise.
Okay.
Pronouns are just the words used in place of other words, so we don't have to keep saying someone's name over and over again or an object over and over again. It's like, this microphone belongs over there. Could you please move that microphone? If you had to say that all the time, it would sound ridiculous. The microphone belongs over there. Could you move it, please? Is a lot more natural.
Yeah.
Where is your father? He's over there. Instead of having to say my father is. That's what a pronoun is. It's just a smaller word used in place of other words. In the English language, it is a gendered thing. It's not gendered in all languages, but pronouns are gendered in the English language. So he, him, his, she, her, hers, they, them, their. So if someone identifies as a man, call them he, him, his. If as a woman, he, him, her, she, her, hers, and For non-binary people, a lot of us use they, them, their, and it is actually grammatically correct. People is like, you're not more than one thing. You can't be that. And it's like, actually, the singular they has been used since like the 1300s in literature. So yes, it is a thing, and people say it all the time. It's like, where's your dad? They went down to the store.
Yeah.
You'll hear people. You hear people often will say, use they instead of he or she.
They're over there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're over there.
Totally.
Kind of so, but when it becomes to being about addressing a trans person, it becomes a big issue for some reason.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to answer all your questions pretty succinctly. If someone's trying, and they slip up, I'll just remind them. It's like, hi, yeah, no, it's they or she now, not he. It's like, oh, sorry. Actually, don't say sorry. Just say thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Because if you say sorry all the time, you're forcing that person into the emotional aspect of having to forgive everybody all the time. Just thank them for the reminder and move on. Now, for people who are making no effort to get it right, or people who are being malicious about it, because there are people who are out there, it's like, oh, you're trans. Well, sir, or something along those lines. That's something. Oh, yes. I'll talk about that in a moment. That's when you're deliberately trying to harm somebody, honestly. If people are going out of their way to use the wrong pronoun for somebody, you're saying, no, I do not accept you for who you are. No, I hear what you say, but I don't care. I know you better than you know yourself.
Wow.
I don't believe your identity is a real thing, so I'm not going to acknowledge it. So that's what misgendering does to somebody. So using the wrong pronouns on purpose, using the wrong honorific on purpose, calling me sir, or seriously, how can you call me sir? And
I love it.
And or calling a trans man ma'am, though that's just being malicious, and that's someone trying to hurt you, and you're not. What they're doing, they're not ever going to change a trans person's mind about being trans.
Yeah.
What they're going to do is let us know that you can't be trusted. You're someone that I have no interest in learning, anything more about you. Because once you started misgendering me on purpose, you can't be trusted. And I probably can't work with you. And that could be what they're looking for. They could be looking to drive you out. However, nowadays, in a lot of corporations, the person who is being the jerk is the one who can get fired. Not everywhere. A lot of small companies, we're just not comfortable working with you. You're fired. Was legal up until last year.
Wow.
Excuse me. A year and a half ago. It was summer of 2020. Bergerfeld decision said that said that you can't fire people for being gay or trans. And up until that point, it was legal in many states to fire somebody for being trans. It's still legal to kick people out of an apartment when you find out they're trans in a lot of states. There's been a federal decision on that.
Wow. We have a Facebook user that said misgender. I was not aware of that term. Stay strong.
Thank you. And yeah, a lot of things around the trans community is not known. And that's why the politicians get away with this. They try to treat being trans as a mental disorder or a threat to the community. And when it really what it is just people who are born slightly different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's not a mental disorder. It's not a delusion or a paraphilia or anything. It's just who you are, and just the way you were born. But a lot of people, especially on the far right politicians nowadays, and not everybody on the far right even, there are trans people who are very right wing, believe it or not. But they want to turn it into something that it's not, and use trans people as the boogeyman that they used to use gay people for. And then, gay rights came along and nothing bad happened. So now they have to find somebody else to blame everything on, because blaming racial minorities is not good, not something that people really will go with anymore.
It's so crazy that you just said that, because Linda just popped up and said, does the transgender receive more discrimination than a regular who identifies as just being gay?
Okay. Two things there. Transgender is an adjective, not a noun. So we're not the transgenders. We're just transgender people. And because when you do that, you're othering us. You're saying, the transgenders are these people over here. The regular people are people that you can respect. That's something that a lot of people do, is they try to turn us into a class of other, which is something that I will always fight back about. Even if it's well-intentioned, I will tell you, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, that's how we learn. That's how we adjust,
yeah, exactly. I am a regular person. But do we face more discrimination? Do transgender people face more discrimination? Hells yes. Sorry for the language, but it's we even face discrimination within the LGBTQ community. There are gay people who do not accept transgender people. So it's again, and it's because of a lot of misinformation out there. Trans people are just thank you, Linda. Trans people are just people, and a lot of the misinformation out there is designed to say that no, we're not. We're weird. We're different. And that's not true. Actually, I think being transgender is the most boring thing about me. It's like I have 2 master's degrees. I've seen opera. There's all kinds of things about me that are way more interesting about being trans, but I can't stop talking about it because people want to categorize me as something bizarre.
Yeah.
And if they would just listen, pay attention, they would realize, I'm just an average person.
100%.
Slightly above average, actually, but that's just
I love it. Can you explain, because it's come up a couple times, can you just talk for a couple minutes on binary, non-binary, they, them?
Yeah. The gender binary is there are men, there are women, there's nothing else. And through modern gender theory and through looking at psychology and neurology and various things, we found that even biological sex isn't clearly this or that. It's a spectrum. Even biological sex can is on a spectrum. So if your body can be on a spectrum, then obviously your brain can be on a spectrum. And so some people, we don't really identify with being a man or being a woman. We're somewhere in between, or maybe that concept doesn't even really register just because of the way we're wired. So a non-binary person, they can present any way they want. I present more feminine. They're very masculine looking people that will tell you, no, I'm an MB. I really don't identify as a man. So don't call me he, him, even though they're standing there at 6'3", bushy beard and shoulders. Wow. They can still be a non-binary person. It's just someone who in their hearts of hearts, or more likely in their brain structure, does the term man or woman does not resonate with them. So that's one of those things that a lot of people, again, it's harder to explain. I hope that wasn't me.
That was me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's it is harder to explain, honestly. It's just basically, I know myself. I don't think I'm a woman, but I know I'm not a man. Is how I often will say it. I still have a hard time saying that I am a woman, because that doesn't really resonate like in my brain, even though I really enjoy looking feminine, and I enjoy, presenting like this. I mean, actually, I'm using my forced day off from work to shoot some videos for my YouTube channel. So I'm actually in my costume for my YouTube channel, and minus the glasses. I'll take those off later. So yeah, sorry.
I was on your website, Addison's Agenda, right?
Yeah.
addisonsagenda.com. And I came across modern gender theory.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, modern gender theory is a cross-disciplinary way of looking at gender. It's divided into 5 areas: biological sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, romantic orientation, and gender presentation. And these 5 areas are things that people think are like the same thing, but they're actually subparts of gender overall. So biological sex, the way you're built, the way you relate to your body, the way that others relate to you because of your body, is part of your gender. It's not gender in and of itself. Sex is not gender, but it is part of your gender, because a body has social and cultural ramifications for the individual. Gender identity, that is the part of that is the brain knowing itself. And we know from those twin studies, we know from people with intersex people, that gender identity has its basis in brain structure. So the way your brain relates to your body, neither controls the other, but they both go part of your gender. Then there's sexual orientation. One of the things that kept me from realizing that I'm trans was that I really like women. And growing up, the idea was that trans women are just gay men who take it a step further. And that prejudice was in me. It was part of me. So I had to unlearn that. And once I did some research on it, there are lots of gay trans people. So lots of trans lesbians. There are lots of trans gay men. But there are also straight trans people, and bisexual and pansexual. So your gender identity does not actually control your sexual orientation. Similarly, your romantic orientation, or a better term for it, I think, is affectional bonding. Your ability to form friendships or close bonds with people. Do you tend to form bonds more with men, with women, both equally, people who are somewhere in the middle? Who is it that you're most likely to form an affectional bond with? And again, it's not the same as sexual orientation. Think of the bromance. There are many men who form affectional bonds with other men more so than they do with women, but they are much more sexually attracted to women. So you get the phenomenon of the bromance. You're much better friends with your male friends than you are with your girlfriend or your wife.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what affectional bonding is. So who you form close bonds with may not necessarily be who you're sexually attracted to.
Wow. Okay.
And then gender presentation is basically how you present yourself to the world. Okay. As a as a trans feminine person, I present to the world as in a much more feminine manner.
Yeah.
Some people go for androgyny, some people go for masculinity, and some people go for mixing things up every day.
Yeah.
They can wear a dress one day and a 3-piece suit the next.
Yes. That reminds me of what's the show? Is it Queer Eye? Queer Eye?
Used to be Queer Eye for the straight guy. No,
yes. The guy with the long hair. That's like my favorite.
Jonathan Van Ness.
Non-binary, and yeah, he dresses all crazy. I love it. You never know what you're going to get with him.
Very true.
But he'll wear like crop top and a dress, and then the next day he'll wear like slacks and like a man, like a man's t-shirt or whatever. So that's it. Okay. So I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So the way you communicate to the world about your gender, how you perform your gender, your presentation is part of your gender. So it's looking at those 5 aspects of gender and how they interrelate in the individual and is projected in the world. See, the gender binary that we talk about most of the time, you must be a man, you must be a woman, that is very socially constructed. We have rules for the way a man is supposed to act. We have rules for the way a woman is supposed to act. And we teach those to our children basically at birth. We start treating boys like boys and we treat girls like girls. And so a lot of what we think of as gender, why people equate sex with gender, is actually a social construct that we teach our children. Modern gender theory looks at it from the opposite direction. It's how is the individual and what do they project out into culture?
Yeah.
And I think it's a healthier way of looking at things, because it focuses on on individual growth and acceptance than it is trying to conform to what everybody else wants you to be.
Yeah. There's I've heard of the mothers and fathers that are doing that now, where there's no gender put onto the child. So they're called they, them, and toys and clothing, everything is just whatever the child is attracted to. They don't lean in one way or the other, which is so interesting. I've seen both sides. People get very upset about it. And then there's other people, just like anything, people that are super passionate about it. Yeah. But definitely a very interesting concept, and I totally understand it.
Well, toys are actually one of the ways we train people, because we have the boys section, we have the girls section. So you go to the boys section to get boys toys, and you are supposed to do what boys do and be interested in these boys toys. And you take a girl there and she doesn't, if she likes the boy stuff, why tell her she can't have it?
Yeah.
And why tell a boy he can't have a doll if that's what he really wants?
Yeah.
But you will see I guarantee you go to a toy store or just a toy section in a store, and you will see eventually someone go, no, put that down. That's for girls. You're a boy, be a boy.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is teaching people, no, you can't be what you know yourself to be. You have to be what society tells you to be.
Yeah.
And
not trying to, put any shame on my family or anything, but 2 girls, I'm the oldest, then my sister and my brother came 10 years after me. So there's a huge gap there. And my brother would be grabbing Barbie dolls or dolls because we had a ton of toys. And my dad would have total hissy fits if my brother was picking up, and no shame on my dad, like I'm not trying to be
well, that's how he was
or anything. But yeah, say exactly what you're saying. My brother would get, I guess, shamed or whatever for wanting to play with any doll, anything that was pink. So we guide according to what we believe is appropriate in society.
Right. Yeah. And instead of listening to the individual, and that's what causes things like gender dysphoria and, depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. When you want to be playing with those girl toys because you kind of feel like a girl, but society's like a father or a mother or, an older brother saying, no, put that down. What the heck are you doing? Boys don't play with that. And it happens every day in this country. And that's what causes a lot of the psychological issues that trans people end up dealing with. It's not being trans. Being trans is not a mental disorder. It's the stuff that we have to go through that causes trans people to have mental disorders.
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes sense. My fiance's son, trans male, he identifies as a straight man. So he has a female girlfriend, and he did the same, very similar to what you did, where he thought he was a lesbian. So when he first started to come to, he thought, he was attracted to females, lesbian. And then it took about a year for, it to really start. And I don't know if it was he knew and he just was like helping us adjust, or if he himself was also just kind of confused, similar to your story, where you're like, you had some sort of, cognitive dissonance with that.
Right.
So interesting. And when I hear him speak so eloquently about his desires and his feelings towards, look at how handsome I am, he talks about his jawline all the time because he's, starting to do all that, and how much he loves the female body, and him finally, because this is just over the last couple of years, him finally being totally open with like saying like, that girl's hot. Look at how hot that girl is. It just warms my heart that he has come to a point in his life where he's 100% with who he is in his identity and able to speak openly about that and be accepted. It makes me feel so good. It makes me feel so good.
Yeah, the acceptance part is amazingly huge for trans people. That is actually one of the things that helps more than anything else, is having an accepting family.
Yeah.
Because we know that a lot of families aren't. A lot of kids get kicked out of their homes when they come out as gay or trans or any part of being LGBTQ.
Yeah.
It's our homeless population, about 40% of the homeless population is LGBTQ people.
Wow.
We only make up about 4% of the population overall, but because so many of us are kicked out of our homes when they're young, we make up a huge part of the homeless population because of that.
I didn't even think of that. There is a comment from Linda that I want to read. She says, not trying to be offensive, Addison, but just want to get a better understanding. Does transgender just identify as female, or are there male transgender as well? Oh, wow. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
This is how like oblivious.
Yeah. Trans men. That's what we've been talking about. Her soon-to-be stepson, Sabrina's soon-to-be stepson, is a trans man. Born as a woman and knows himself to be a man. Born female, I should say, but knows himself to be a man. Yeah. I born male, but I know myself to be somewhere in the middle, but leaning toward female. Yeah, there are lots of different ways of being transgender. Trans women, trans men, non-binary people, and there are so many terms for non-binary people. There's genderqueer, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, but only if you're Native American. Do not call yourself if you're not a Native American from the nation that believes that.
Wow. Is there a book? You need to write a book, Addison. Are you writing a book?
There are lots of books, actually. Whipping Girl by Julia Serrano, Gender Warriors by, oh my gosh. Why am I forgetting? Kate Bornstein. There we go. Yeah, there's many websites. There's actually lots of books out there on gender identity, and I actually am writing a book based on my old Ask Addie column and video series that I'm putting out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, I want to just notate, just in general, that you you teach on this. Like, this is a subject that you go into places and educate individuals, workplaces, right? Workplaces.
Right. Yeah, I've spoken to I think my most recent one was with Girls Inc. The girls empowerment place.
She's just explained. She said thank you. So.
Okay. It's an organization that uplifts teenage girls, and the national organization has recently started saying explicitly that they do take transgender girls and non-binary people. So they asked me to come in and do, I actually did the Power of Pronouns is one of my presentations. They also asked me to do a full 4-hour workshop with them, where we take them through the different aspects of modern gender theory, explain the social and legal issues that are going on with trans people and the LGBTQ community in general, actually, and also talk about how people can be better allies. And that's what I do. That's the 4-hour half-day course that I do. But I also do stuff about communicating, about how we talk about gender when it comes to the gender binary, and how that drives our thinking. And then if you look at it from a modern gender theory point of view, so my teachings are often more, they're more based on the science side of things. A lot of people will talk about the social science. I do more of a social science and hard science kind of combo concept to let people understand, because a lot of people, they use science from a 5th grade reader and published in 1984 to justify. It's like, if you're a man, you have an XY chromosome. And if you're a woman, you have an XX chromosomes, and you can't. That's not true. Actually, there's lots of XX men and XY women, and there's XXX and XXY and XYY, and there's all kinds of combinations. And
that's not what they teach us in school.
No, it's not. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And if you try to teach these things in school, you get a state legislature trying to ban all the books that would talk about LGBTQ people, and trying to make sure that those subjects are never taught.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we have to deal with, is that being trans is deemed an inappropriate subject.
Yeah.
Because we're immoral for existing.
Yeah.
And that's something like Texas, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, where I'm currently at, Indianapolis. Okay. Anyway, so it's really frustrating to have all the science out there. I mean, this is open source stuff. You can look it up.
Yeah.
But people are taught old science and said, don't look at any of the new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the stuff that you talked about when you first came on, I had no idea. I so appreciate that there's so many layers to it. Like, there's so many different, I mean, I'm definitely think I'm going to rewatch this. It's like,
I did want to be information heavy.
Of education, that's there's such a lack of education in this arena that's keeping us all like this,
and it's purposeful. That's something you have to understand. Is that there are people out there who want to make sure that we don't talk about being trans, so that little Jill and Johnny don't get the idea that they might be trans.
I
mean, they're literally trying, and it doesn't keep someone from being trans. If that worked, I wouldn't exist. Because I was born in the 70s, 70 actually. So if making sure that I never heard about being trans, the only thing not hearing about non-binary people did was prevent me from putting words to it. I still had the same feelings. I still didn't like men that much. I was still much more attracted to women. I didn't like being a man. But, the only thing, I was trans. even if I didn't realize it myself. So the terminology and learning about other people does not turn you trans. It just makes you ignorant, and it makes you treat other people poorly.
Yeah.
That's the only thing being ignorant about anything.
Yeah.
And there are so many people out there who are trying to keep people ignorant.
Yeah.
They're banning books by Black authors that have nothing to do with critical race theory because they don't want people to understand how poorly Black people have been treated in this country.
Absolutely.
They're blocking LGBTQ books because they don't want people to understand how poorly LGBTQ people are treated and that we're actually really normal if you just get to know us.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that I don't understand is it's just people have other like things that they do behind closed doors that's not even that big of a, you know what I mean? Like we do all sorts of things behind closed doors, like in or behind closed doors, out of like who cares? I just don't understand what the big deal is to me. It's like let them live their best, let everyone live their best life. Like why does any of it matter to anybody?
That is a good question.
It's just so baffling to me. Like I would never go to someone's house and be like, how dare you knit sweaters? You know, like I can't believe you knit sweaters. Like it's the same. Like who cares what people are doing?
Yeah, no, I understand.
Baffling. Absolutely baffling. Linda said this is very enlightening and a lot to understand. So I can just imagine the challenges that the LGBTQ community are confronted with on a daily basis. Unfortunately, American wants to whitewash everything to make it look like Leave It to Beaver and not deal with the facts of America. And it's all overall prejudices across the board. 100%.
Yeah.
And Linda's African American. Yeah, she's got a crazy story. Her daughter HPV got HPV, and the doctors didn't inform her on the fact that HPV can lead to cancer, and she died. Yeah, insane story. She's a wonderful, and she has a community that she helps enlighten about HPV and how you have to really watch that because it can turn into something dreadful, absolutely dreadful. So thank you, Linda.
There's a vaccine for it. What's really frustrating is there is a vaccine for it, but there are places that are trying to ban the vaccine because it might encourage people to have sex.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I bet. And that's one of the things she talks about is the HPV. We talked for a very long time on that. The shot, making sure everyone has that shot. Listen, Addison, what's some advice for people that are struggling with their identity?
Read. It's what helped me. And it's hard to give generalized advice because everybody's situation is different. There are some kids that they know they're trans, but they dare not come out because they'll end up on the street.
Yeah.
So in general, know that there are places out there to help if you're in a situation where you don't feel safe to come out. There are people willing to be in community with you. Every city has their own Facebook group. Here in Indianapolis, it's Queering Indy, and I'm sure down in Florida, if you searched queer or LGBTQ groups for your city, you'll find several.
Yeah.
It's make connections and do what you need to do to stay safe. I'm in the trans community. I'm actually very privileged because I figured myself out late in life. I already had a good job. I already had a house. I already had a child and an ex-wife. But people, and a lot of that's just because I didn't figure myself out until later in life.
Yes. Okay.
But people who are younger, they don't get those same advantages.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I said, it's hard to give advice that's not tailored because everybody is in a different situation. And I come from a situation where I could just say, all right, figure myself out. I'm Addie now, deal with it.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
So I don't like giving generalized advice other than we're here and we're willing to accept you and you will find friends who are willing to accept you. But also be prepared that you're going to lose friends when you come out and you're going to lose family when you come out.
Did you have separate conversations with everybody? How did you kind of really?
My ex-wife first. Then I told my mom, and I really thought her eyebrows were going to end up on the back of her head when I told her. Told my daughter, she didn't care. She literally, I took her. I think it was going to be this emotional thing, and took her to a Cold Stone Creamery and got her the biggest thing. And I told her, finally, it's like, you know what trans is? Yes. She's 12 at the time, and well, I am. Oh. She didn't care. She knew what it meant, and that's the great thing about kids. A lot of kids, they do not care about, it gives me hope for our future, as long as we don't have current politicians trying to shove them into the ground.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, and I did promise HR to say something about HRT before he left.
Yeah.
HRT is hormone replacement therapy. It is for trans men. It's basically taking shots of testosterone, and that is usually enough to masculinize a trans man. So their face shape just changes. Their jawline gets stronger. They do start growing facial hair. Their voice will drop. And their body, they will gain muscle mass, and their body fat distribution will change. For trans women, it's a testosterone blocker. Usually in the States, it's spironolactone, which is technically a diuretic. So we go to the restroom a lot when we go on it. But its side effect is suppressing testosterone. So you take spironolactone, you have to drink a lot of fluids and eat a lot of salt to keep your electrolytes balanced. Right. And then you use either pills or patches, sometimes injections of estradiol or just straight up estrogen. And that does basically the opposite. It sadly does not affect facial hair and voices. Your voice does not go back up. And this is actually my natural voice. People always say you don't sound like a
I said that to you too. Yeah. You didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't have even.
This is my
like if I didn't know anything and I just was talking to you and your name was Addison, I wouldn't have thought anything. That's nice
it is nice. I have a very androgynous voice, so I either sound like a high-pitched man or a low-pitched woman. And actually, I found I did some playing with a voice modulator and discovered that I speak basically the same pitch as Scarlett Johansson, so I'm kind of happy about that.
Yes.
So that's what hormone replacement.
So wait, so where do people find this? Is there a website?
You have to go to a doctor.
A doctor.
These things can only be prescribed. Okay. Endocrinologists are the main kind of doctors who deal with hormone replacement. There are family doctors who will prescribe for trans people. You have to look around. And you also have to be in a state where they're not trying to ban it because they don't like trans people to exist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's just, so it's available, but there's people
it's available. It's out there. Yeah, there's even a black market for it because of people trying to, because of the being banned, because of doctors not wanting to get involved and having to deal with the hassles of people being jerks to them too.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of caveats, but for me, I go to my doctor and he prescribed spironolactone. He prescribed estradiol patches. I call them my outer ovaries. And
that's great.
4.5 years later, I look totally different. And yeah,
Wow.
but again, I'm from a privileged position. I have insurance that covers it. Not everybody does.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing. What's the number one lesson you've learned about life?
Be accepting of others. Just take them at their own terms. Don't tell them what they're supposed to be. Just learn who they are instead of trying to pigeonhole them into something else. Because that works not just for the LGBTQ community, it works for racial minorities or racial differences. It works for cultural differences. Learn about them, learn to accept them. And sometimes learning to accept them is learning to accept that they're a jerk. It's not exclusive to any group.
Yeah.
But also groups that you think might be weird or odd, you can find out that these people are great. You can find out that a trans person could actually become your best friend. You can find out that this Latinx person or this Black person or this Asian person has way more in common with you than what you would ever expect, and maybe something different than people of your own ethnic background. Just learn about people on their own terms instead of relying on stereotypes, instead of trying to stereotype them yourself or put them in boxes that they may not actually fit into, but you try to shove them into this box, and it hurts you and it hurts them.
Yeah.
Just learn about people on their own terms and accept who they are.
Definitely.
And if they're a jerk, they're a jerk. If they're not, great.
What is one of the most disempowering beliefs you've had in your life, and what do you believe now?
Oh, it was the whole, trans people are weird, and trans people are just gay men who are like trans women are just gay men who are, that was something that was impressed upon me growing up, and it was wrong, and I knew it was wrong, but it was still part of my background information, and I had to fight through that to get to where I am now. So a lot of times we embody the exactly opposite of what we need to be because of what we are taught.
Yeah.
We are taught that, through television and such, that trans people are insane. So that's at the back of your mind, and it prevents you from figuring yourself out or learning to accept somebody who is trans, who is different from you. So look for those things that our culture says is true, but they aren't actually true.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think people really need to understand, is that a lot of the things our culture tells us is bunk, and we have to unlearn a lot of things, especially about ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
There are things about ourselves that we have to unlearn, and go from there.
Definitely. There's still a friggin' large amount of people watching, even though we've been here for well over an hour. So I just want to give a shout out to all of you that are watching live. We so appreciate the support, and we appreciate the fact that you are open and willing to be learning and adjusting, how you're viewing life. So I do want to ask you, Addison, I know that we talked a little bit previously about, what you do, but I'd love for you to just kind of talk about your business, what you do for humankind. And
like I said, I work at a library most of the time, but whenever I can line up a gig, I do freelance, LGBTQ centered, DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or maybe DEB, diversity, equity, and belonging, trainings based on a more scientific instead of a feel good, everybody like each other kind of thing that a lot of people do. I hit the science a lot harder than a lot of trainings that I've been to. And I do the standard, well, not standard, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the kind of trainings that you'll get about understanding how other people feel, that is part of my training. But I also really try to show people that a lot of the things that we have learned, we need to unlearn, and show them the science behind that. I write on Medium, Addison J. Smith. I have a YouTube channel, Addison's Agenda. My website is Addison's Agenda. My socials are Addison's Agenda.
Yeah.
That started out as a joke, making fun of the Rush Limbaugh and all these people like gay agenda. It's like
that's good for you.
Yeah, so it's like, what? Who would be making this agenda? There's a central committee? Really? I didn't know. But yeah, that's the gay agenda. The trans agenda is basically leave us alone.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So yeah, I took the name to turn it around and say, okay, you want an agenda? Here's my agenda. Learn to be better. And so yeah, that's what I do. Actually, I'm going to spend the rest of the day making Ask Addies, which is a advice column on YouTube, advice video show on YouTube. I have 3 episodes up, and then I had to take a break because I broke my computer, and I am.
And then there was a place like the library or something was filled with water.
Oh yeah, yeah. Our the library I work at, we had a water main break in the basement, and it flooded our entire basement. We had to abandon it back in September. We're still we had to move our collections out. We had to move all of our staff out.
Wow.
They're downstairs. You can hear them taking a machine that it looks like a Zamboni, but it's going around the floor, just ripping the carpet out because it all has to go. It's all been ruined.
Wow.
And we had to take down walls that have been infiltrated with too much water. And they're basically just going to reimagine what the basement is, and we'll get back in there eventually.
Wow. That was crazy when I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on here?
Yeah. So that happened, and then I tried to clean some stickers off my laptop, and there was a crack in the seal on the laptop, and the cleanser got into it and ruined it. So I actually ran a Kickstarter that failed. And I made a Facebook post talking about my health issues. When I joked about I look so young because it's a genetic disorder.
Yeah.
It's a genetic disorder. I have hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which affects your joints and skin to make them way stretchier than they're supposed to be. So my skin is too stretchy to wrinkle. So I look young for my age.
Yes, girl.
Yeah. That's the good part. The fact that my neck is falling apart and my shoulder might dislocate at any moment is the bad part.
Got to take the negatives with the positives.
Exactly.
That's with that one. Oh,
so yeah,
wow.
that's what I'm using my businesses for, is to help me and my daughter. My daughter was also diagnosed. She actually has a stronger presentation of HEDS than I do, and she's 17 and already walking with a cane. So all my DEI stuff, all my YouTube stuff, anything I make off of that actually goes to pay medical bills for both of us, because it's really expensive just getting diagnosed.
Wow.
I have a sleep study coming up, an fMRI. I've already had an echocardiogram, and I might actually have to have a surgery to bolt my head back onto my neck, literally.
Wow.
Sink a plate into the back of my skull and some screws into my vertebrae, and then connect them all with a cable, basically, to keep my neck from falling apart.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I look young.
the vanity in us, the vanity
Yeah.
in us. So Addison, what does success mean to you?
Success to me is honestly helping people learn. I think the greatest thing any of us can do is teach others to be more accepting of others. You know, not just of like just trusting, teaching you like cisgender people to be more accepting and trusting of trans people, but the other way around, because a lot of trans people have had bad experiences with cisgender people, and it erodes trust. But that's just one element, you know, learning about other ethnicities, other cultures, uh, being able to teach others to be better to each other is really what I see as success. And I won't make a lot of money doing that. I don't make a lot of money doing that. But whenever someone says, "You help me understand," I see that as a personal success for me. And that's really what I want to do with my DEI business, with my videos. Uh, help them understand about being trans, help them others. I'm going to start a second series about HEDS, and to you know, my kid gets made fun of because she's walking with a cane in high school. Wow. And she's in marching band. It's really she can march for the 10 minutes you need to do a show, and then she comes off and grabs her cane.
Wow, good for her. For like,
yeah. Oh, she's amazing. My kid is absolutely amazing. She won best soloist in class twice this marching season. She has won writing. She won a 5th grade writing award in 4th grade. She was all county, first year all county in 7th grade, beating out all the 8th graders. She's all county band. She's a trumpeter.
Well, you're music, right?
Yeah, my first degree was in music composition.
Yeah,
my first master's was in music composition. I started a doctorate, got to ABD, all but dissertation, and that's when we got divorced. And so I kind of backburnered it for a while. When I went back to it, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a college professor anymore. So I never finished that doctorate. So that's when I went and got the master's degree in digital storytelling. That's why I have a video studio in my house, is because I know how to use all this gear, and I try to use the communication studies side of that I learned to tell stories. Hopefully, answer questions, and I hope to tell the story of dealing with HEDS with my upcoming series of videos, and hopefully my daughter will be in some of them. I don't like to talk about her symptoms and stuff without her being here. It's just creepy, I think.
Yeah.
But if she comes on with me, a lot of them are just, I hope to do some conversations about what each of us are dealing with. Problem is, she lives in West Virginia. I live in Indiana, so
you might have to do it on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, listen, Addison, I so appreciate you hanging out with me. This has been absolutely great. I love the vibrations that you give, and the fact that you enjoy, teaching and learning, and then regurgitating all of the things for us to really grasp a hold of. What's one thing everyone should know about you before we close up here?
I don't know. We've already talked about most of it. I'm trans. I have a great kid. I have degrees.
You mentioned
I love cooking. I have recently, cooking. I have recently, I'm sorry, I'm getting stopped up. I recently started giving in to my cravings, but only on Sundays. So instead of going to restaurants, I'm learning how to make the food. So in the last few weeks, I learned how to make a red wine reduction for steak. I learned how to make jambalaya. I've learned how to make English style fish and chips.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm teaching. I'm going to YouTube and learning how to make all these foods, and having a lot of fun with that. I might actually add a third show on my YouTube channel for cooking things because it's so much fun.
Yes, 100%. Linda said, thank you so much for this segment. Victoria and Addison, I have learned so much today.
Thank you for watching and for all your comments.
Yes,
I love that.
I love it when a couple of people come out of their shell and speak with us. So I so appreciate it. And for those of you that are still watching live, thank you so much for the support and the love. Addison and I so appreciate you being here and hanging out with us for a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and close up. So I thank everyone for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day, and it's filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you subscribe. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others.